And welcome on back to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Barrett Brooks and Harry Mays. Half hour into Big Wednesday show. Got a couple of guests coming up, a couple of big topics that are brewing. And we spent the first half hour of the show basically going through the roster. The 53-man is now been determined. Practice squad is coming up next. And on to talk about that and all things Eagles is our buddy Dave Zangaro from NBC Sports Philly. And Dave, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
I'm good, guys. How you doing?
All right.
Hey, what's up, bro?
Your plant looks like it grew a little bit with all this rain.
Exactly, yeah. We've been trimming it back.
Right. All right. What were your initial thoughts? Any surprises? Anything jump out at you after the 53-man came out yesterday?
Yeah, there were a few surprises. And look, it's not done. They have the 6th priority in that waiver claim order. So the last time they had a new head coach, they claimed 3 players. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that happens again. So it's the 53-man for now, but we'll see. The biggest surprises, at least numbers-wise, 5 receivers, 3 running backs. That's light. And the Jordan Howard cut surprised me more than, honestly, the Travis Fulgham cut. Just because, and look, I don't think Jordan Howard is a great player, but the way they treated him during training camp, I thought he was going to be on the team. And they can cut him and bring him back. They can play that game, and maybe that's what they're doing. But based on the way, I mean, he was the first guy with the second team every day. And I thought for sure he had this roster made. I thought they were going to keep 4. So that was a little bit of a surprise. And Fulgham's a mild surprise. I mean, this is a guy who, on merit, did not deserve to make this roster. He didn't have a very good summer. But it's tough to cut a guy when you saw what he could do in games last year. And if there's any bit of that still left in him, it's tough to give up on it.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest surprise was the tight end position, man. They cut Richard Rodgers. At this point, I think they have one guy that can block the edge on the run, and that's Dallas Goedert. All the other guys are really token they're token blockers, but they're very good catching tight ends. Yeah. I mean, what do you say about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. And Rodgers is another guy who we could see in another week. He's a vested veteran, and that's the game. They can bring him back after week 1 and not have to guarantee his salary. We've seen the Eagles do that before. It was like a yearly occurrence with Najee Good. And, Richard Rodgers was out there for a long time. Same with Jordan Howard. I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams going after those guys. So the Eagles can play that game if they want and bring him back at a certain point. Tyree Jackson's going to go on IR, I would assume. He's not close to returning, so that'll free up a spot. The tricky thing here is they have a few guys on this roster who can go on IR and likely will with the new IR rule. So you have Tyree Jackson or maybe like a Davion Taylor who's been banged up, maybe Jannard Avery. The problem is you can't put them on IR until after this waiver claim today. So in order to claim a player that got released at final cuts, you have to cut another player. You can't just say, well, we'll put Tyree Jackson on IR. So it's a little tricky right now to kind of figure out how they're going to maneuver this. But I see your point at tight end. I don't know what Jack Stoll is. I get why they kept him. They lost a good young tight end last year in Noah Tongiai, who they thought they could get back to the practice squad, and he was scooped up by the Colts. So maybe that's what they thought about this year with Jack Stoll. They just don't want to lose him, so they keep him around. I don't know how much he can help this year.
Follow Dave on Twitter at DZangaroNBCS. Now, you got something here where you got a list of players that have caught your eye that maybe the Eagles might claim here, because you brought that up in the open that, the previous coaching staffs have acquired a lot of players. So who jumps out at you?
Yeah, there are some names there. And honestly, I didn't like the group of running backs as much. I think if they add a running back, it might have to be later. Just looking at the names that were available, I wasn't really wowed by them. I think there are better receiver options. Tyron Johnson, who has familiarity with Shane Steichen with the Chargers. He played quite a bit last year, had 20 catches. And he also played on some special teams units, which is a big deal when you're talking about a bottom of the roster receiver. Kadero Hodge, who was with the Browns the last couple seasons. I think he's going into his 4th year in the league. he's played a ton of special teams. So it's funny. You can look at all the success guys are having as receivers, but honestly, a lot of the times these back of the roster players need to play special teams. And that was a big thing that the two receivers they cut yesterday, especially John Hightower, just doesn't play special teams. So when you're trying to make a roster, and J. Jaw's not great at it, but he's at least trying. He's getting
Right.
better and he's trying at it. Like half of it's just being willing to get better at being a special teamer.
You like any one of the St. Brown brothers. The guy from Green Bay, who's the older one, and the kid from Detroit, who's the younger one.
Yeah, there's something there. I like. There's some other options I like better, but if it depends on what they're looking for too. I mean, if they're looking at this saying, "Well, we have kind of smaller receivers. Do we want a big body?" There are some big bodies out there for sure. So it just depends on how they want to do it, and it depends if J. Jaw's here to stay because he could fill that role of a big-bodied guy. I know he's been playing in the slot all summer, but he has obviously played outside, and he can maybe fill that role. So it depends on what they really think of him.
You see Devontae Freeman's out there, though.
Oh, yeah, wow. And he's a veteran. So, I could see him being a guy like if they – I don't know how much he has left. That's a serious question, but if they want to look at a veteran, I could see them bringing in a few guys to take a look at them and kind of seeing what they have left in their legs. But I don't know if he'd be the answer there. I sometimes running backs just take that steep decline, and he might have taken it.
Do you think J. Jaw made the team because of what he did again in the final preseason game, or this is like Howie just saying, "Damn it, I'm determined to make this second round pick work out"?
Yeah, it's funny because I think you can make the argument that he would have made the team either way and how he would have said that. Mm-hmm. But it helps their case out because he outplayed Travis Fulgham, not just in that last preseason game, but throughout training camp and John Hightower too. John Hightower was banged up for a while. And it wasn't like J. Jaw had a great summer. He didn't. I mean, he was okay. I thought he had a better summer going into the 2020 season, actually. But I think it is fair to say he outplayed Fulgham. So if the coaching staff and the front office are saying we're not going to care about what these guys have done in the past, and this is a competition, we're going to see what they do here this summer. Yeah, J. Jaw deserved to win the job.
You look at the youth of the offensive line, man. The whole entire second team. Herbig's 2019, Toth 2019. All these guys are really, really young, you know what I'm saying? Landon Dickerson, they got some reps last year, but at the end of the day, man, are these guys good enough to go forward if an injury happens?
And we'll see who they get to their practice squad because they had a few interesting cuts on that O-line. They had to cut someone. I mean, they were so deep that they had to cut some decent players. I mean, Sua Opeda is a guy who played for them last year. They had to cut him. That they're going to try to bring him back to the practice squad. Coyote Owasika from Buffalo had a really good summer. He played mostly guard for the Eagles this summer, but they did give him some reps at tackle. They think he can do both. I mean, they were so deep they traded Matt Pryor. Oh, I like Coyote a lot. He can play. You can tell right away. Even we were watching one-on-ones together. Kid can play, and they tried to hide him. I mean, they were. They all but put a blanket over the kid all summer to make sure other teams didn't see him. So we'll see. We'll see if that worked. The Toth thing is amazing to me. I don't know if he can play or not, but if he can, that's another feather in Jeff Stoutland's cap. And this is a guy who didn't pass protect in college.
Yeah, played in Army. He played in Army.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to pass block, but they made him into a pass blocker. Not only that, he could play guard and tackle. So, he's one of those multi-purposes Swiss Army knives that they love with the Eagles as far as offensive linemen.
Did you hear how easily Coyote's last name rolled off of Dave's tongue, Barrett? You and I
so
struggle with that one. That was so good.
What is it? I said
Awasika. Yeah. I've said a lot. He's been standing out.
Say Marlon's last name.
Marlon Tuipulotu.
Tuipulotu. Just comes right out to him.
Man, boom.
We should be saying his name. He should not have made the 53-man roster.
Yeah, and you mentioned how young the roster is. It's clear that they've gone for developmental young players over guys who can help them right now. And He's a very good example of that. He didn't deserve to make the roster. He finally started to play a little better against the Jets in those practices and in that game. So there's something there. But it's clear. I mean, but even the Landon Dickerson move, he's not ready to play right now. Mm-hmm. But they thought, if we don't want to lose these 6 weeks, the 6-week practice window. Well, really more than that, because we're still a week plus away from the season opening. So they're like 7.5 weeks of practice is more important to us than putting him on in the NFI and having that extra roster spot. They haven't been shy about it. I mean, it comes from the top. Jeff Lurie talked about this being not a rebuilding year, but whatever you want to call it, a developmental year. They're trying to build something. So they've clearly prioritized getting those younger players experience. And I don't necessarily think it's the wrong move. You wonder how it jibes with Nick Sirianni's whole competition mantra, but I get what they're doing.
What did you think of them finally saying that Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback yesterday?
Yeah, it was honestly, it was more than that for me. It was Nick Sirianni saying that, but also the most lavish praise we've heard from Sirianni on Hurts since he's been here. And I think it was purposeful. To me, it was kind of silly, the whole thing. We knew he was a starter. He took every first team rep. So I understand from his perspective why he waited so long. To me, it's silly. To me, we know, just name him. But I thought what was more important yesterday was not that he named him a starter, but that he really praised him for a lot of what he saw this summer. And I've been impressed by Jalen Hurts on the field, off the field. Off the field, it was clear from last year how everyone kind of gravitates toward this kid. Mm-hmm. And last year, it was probably a problem, honestly, that he had that about him. This year, with him being the guy, it's obviously a good thing. And everyone on the team seems to buy into him. And the defense, too. It's like the entire team looks at this kid and thinks he can be our leader. But also on the field, I've been impressed by him as a thrower. And I don't know if he's still a good enough thrower to think that he can be the long-term solution. That's to be determined for me. Mm-hmm. But I was impressed by his arm this summer, especially what I saw last year. I was very skeptical. I'm still somewhat skeptical, but a better thrower than I anticipated.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, they gravitate towards him, because I noticed it too. When he played in those games last year, it's funny. Like they gravitate to everybody but Wentz at the time. Like Voles. Seriously, like you notice it. There's a noticeable difference with the other players when the backup came in.
And to be fair, Foles is a special guy.
Yeah,
he just is. He has a special personality, and I think Jalen is too. So for Carson, it's kind of a shame that he's been sandwiched between these two guys who have that. And they have it in abundance, because not every quarterback does, but it's helpful. And it's clear that the guys just really like Jalen, and he just has this confidence to him. He's exuding confidence all the time. It's quiet.
It's not cocky. It's not cocky. Yeah.
And sometimes it like almost borders. It's weird that you can think someone's cocky with them being quiet, but it's like this quiet confidence. He exudes it. And I don't know if his play will ever catch up to it. If it does, then the Eagles will have themselves a heck of a player.
Right.
I'm curious to see what happens when we get in games, and if what we've seen from him as a passer can translate, because we know he's going to have his legs. He'll have that to fall back on. You don't want to see him need to fall back on it all the time, because the threat of his legs can be enough. And we've seen that at times too. If he's rolling right, and, there's a linebacker out there or a safety out there, and they have to make a split-second decision, Jalen will take that. He'll bait him. He'll throw after they start to crash on him. So I think he has potential. I'm not sold all the way on him as a player. I'm sold on him as a leader, as the guy in the huddle. I'm sold on that part of it. I need to see him as a thrower consistently.
Yeah.
Well, if let's just stay in that meeting room. The Gardner Minshew trade. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought it was a fine trade. I mean, they didn't give up much. It was a 6th-round pick, and Howie already got that 6th-rounder back from Matt Pryor. So they
how about that?
You could have bought me with a wooden nickel that came across the timeline, man. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, it wasn't much. It was a late round pick swap, but just the fact that they got something for a guy they were going to cut,
Right.
pretty impressive. And look, yeah, a 6th-round pick for Howie a year away. He can find ways to get a 6th-round pick back. He had 3 in this last draft, so I thought it was a fine trade.
Do you believe this though? Is it going to cause any trouble like it did with Carson? As far as him looking over his shoulder, do you think that that's going to affect Jalen like it affected Carson? I don't think so personally, but
nah. I mean, they're different guys. That's the one thing, and you have to take into account. I mean, you can fault the Eagles for drafting Jalen for that reason. They didn't take into account the situation and the personalities they had in that room, and that's some people are going to take it as a knock on Carson. I don't mean it like that. I think that Jalen. There's no fragility with Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
There just isn't. If anything, it's going to make him better. And I believe that, So they bring in Minshew, and it does help to have the buffer of Joe Flacco there because Flacco deserves to be the backup right now. They paid him like the backup, and he's going to start the season that way. Now, does that mean if in week 4 someone gets hurt around the league and Howie can get something for him, he won't do it? I mean,
of course,
yeah. Then by that point, Gardner Minshew will have learned the offense, and I think they look at him as a backup quarterback for next year, no matter if Hurts is the starter or if whoever else.
Yeah, he's cheap.
He's cheap next year, under $1 million. Pretty good backup quarterback.
Right.
I think that he's one of those guys. When you're ranking the quarterbacks in the league, he's probably late 20s, early 30s. So he's like a low to me. He's a low level starter or high level backup, and he's just enough to push your starter, but not to really instill a ton of fear as long as your starter's good enough. So I like the pickup, and I think it's kind of to me, it's a move looking forward to 2022, saying this is going to be our backup next year. We'll figure out the starter, whether it's Hurts or a rookie or whoever it is. Minshew's probably the backup next year.
The quarterback factory is always churning.
I love that Howie made fun of himself for that yesterday.
Yeah, I heard he did it. What did he actually say? Like, what was the context?
It was he was asked about Minshew, and he said, we're quarterback. Looked around factory. He knows that. It was funny when he said that when he said that over a year ago. It was one. I don't think it left his mouth, and he realized, I should. And he's joked with us a few times about that. Right. It's not going away. It's pretty funny, and at least he's embracing it a little bit.
Right now, all of their draft picks except one made the team. Jacoby Stevens was released, safety linebacker from LSU. Do you think that was warranted? Was he just didn't impress?
Well, he missed a lot of time with an injury. I think he was on his way to. It was a shame too, because early in camp he was kind of quiet, and then he had this really good day. He had a big interception to cap practice, and then the next day he was on the injury report, and he missed a lot of time. And it's tough when you're a player like that who's kind of a hybrid, and the defensive coordinator kind of has to have a role in mind for you, and they kind of have to have plays in mind for that specific player. To have him not on the field, it's tough to make the roster. So, and he's the only guy they have quite like that, So I think he's an obvious guy to bring back to the practice squad if he clears, and I kind of think he's going to clear. So they can develop him, and they can develop whatever they think that role can be for him. Whereas like the Sam linebacker is kind of a hybrid position in this defense. It's like a half edge rusher, half off ball backer, but they're pretty clear that that's a part of this defense. They have multiple players who can play that role. Whereas this position that Jacoby Stevens was in, it was just him. So they can take some time to develop that and formulate a plan for that position over the next year if he ends up on the practice squad.
All right. Well, now for the headband, Nick Sirianni. Give him a grade for this offseason.
We're doing grades. You're going to make him give you a grade.
For the preseason, we're done with this portion of the year is done. The preseason is done. I'm gonna ask you 4 games from now. What do you need for the first quarter of the season?
All right. Wow. For training camp and preseason, I'll say it was a solid B.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go too lavish with the praise because I don't know how it's going to work out. But what I was impressed with him about was just how much he stuck to his guns. And you can disagree with some of the things he's done. You can think that him showing a video of Kobayashi's silly, or you can think that the rah-rah stuff is over the top and the competition angle is over the top. But he's been himself since he got here, and he's been pretty unapologetic about it. He clearly had a plan of how he wanted to teach, how he wanted to act on the practice field, how he wanted to act in the meeting rooms, in the locker room, and he executed that plan. Is it going to work? I don't know, but I give him credit for, a lot of first-year head coaches aren't that sure of themselves. And I was impressed by how sure of himself he was. I was impressed by the level of intensity he got out of his practices, even though they were very short. I was impressed that during joint practices, they were the better team. I didn't like that the starters barely played in the preseason, I'll be honest, but I understand why he did it. I understand that this team doesn't have a ton of depth, and I wouldn't want to get my starters hurt either. So, look, mildly impressed. And if we're looking at him, I think there's really two roles you look at near. One, I just talked about the head coach. He's also really the offensive coordinator. So from the offensive coordinator standpoint, I really like what I've seen from the offense in practices. We didn't see it in the preseason purposely, but in practices, I like what I've seen. I think they're going to be a versatile offense. And I think he's finding ways to utilize his players' strengths, which is what he said he was going to do. But I think we've seen that he's doing that, especially with guys like Jalen Hurts and how athletic the offensive line is. It seems like screens are going to be a big part of this offense, and they should be. They should have been under Doug when this offensive line was healthy, and they never were. So I think he's looking at what he has, and he's making the best of it.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm sorry, Harry.
Go ahead.
I said screens and Barrett's
Right. No, but I'm just saying this. I gave him a B-. And the only reason I didn't give him a B+ or maybe the A- is because how he conducted, the players not getting enough reps. To me, I'm an old school guy. I want you to play in the preseason, but that's neither here nor there. But just like you said, he had a purpose. He aligned himself with that purpose, and the team followed along with him. He was a leader. People think that, he's a pushover. No, he's not a pushover. The guys respect him. So is that he took control of this team
too.
Right.
Yeah,
he took control of this team. This is his team. This is his team. And I didn't know if he was going to be able to do it from his first press conference, but he has definitely taken the reins to this team, and they believe in him. And those guys are going forward in the direction that he has highlighted for them. And to me, as a rookie head coach, he's done a masterful job at it.
See, I think you gave him a B, and Seth looked up from his YouTube channel and wrote over and put a minus next to it. I think you gave him a B. Because you're Mr. Optimist here. What are you talking about, B-?
So we watched the last 2 preseason games, and you were in the office. You see us in the office. Seth says, "You know what? I'm not watching any more of this," and starts looking at his phone and watching YouTube.
It was hard to watch, but you know what? That's kind of like Sirianni. They were pretty clear that they cared more about the practices than they did the games. So, that's why it was funny talking about them winning practices.
Yeah,
I felt silly saying that.
I know,
but when the head coach puts more emphasis in that setting, you kind of have to look at that setting more than the game.
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
yeah.
One thing's for sure.
I thought they did good there.
One thing's for sure, man. He loves him some ball, man. It's a legit. It's not fake. He loves football, and I like that.
It's fun talking to him about his wheelhouse. Like if you talk to him about receivers, and hearing him talk about Devontae is fun because Devontae is just such a polished route runner, and hearing him talk about like sticking his foot in the ground at the top of his breaks, and that's where. And it's fun to watch him coach the receivers too. Some head coaches. And you wonder, too, like if Aaron Moorhead's like, oh, here comes Sirianni again to coach my guys. But it seems like they've been in lockstep with each other. And you can see his passion, especially with the receiver position or teaching running backs how to run routes. Like that's his wheelhouse.
Right. Hey, Dave, we really appreciate you jumping on, man. Great stuff. You got to follow him on Twitter at NBC or at D Zangaro and NBCS, right?
Yeah, that's it.
There it is. That guy finally spit it out.
Appreciate you, bro.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah,
all right, guys.
All right,
take care.
There he is.
Later, bro.
Great stuff there. Love that.
I mean, talking about a student of Eagles, man. That's all he does. He eats, sleep, and breathes Eagles, man. Me, I got to get away from it sometimes. He never gets away from it. Dave is always tied in to everything about it. So I even ask him questions sometimes, you know.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.